This week, Northwest Indiana experienced its first real bout of winter weather. Hoosiers had been enjoying a relatively mild season as compared to last year at this time. But that came to an abrupt end this week with winter's punch of snow, sub-zero temperatures, and dangerous wind chills. Local municipalities were prepared to handle the first real test of their winter readiness. Gary Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson said that after last year's severe snowstorms, the city wanted to be ready this season. Gary has been publicizing its winter snow plan since November and asking citizens to be ready to implement it. The Indiana Department of Transportation had crews working overtime to clear region highways, but despite that, the winter blast did catch some drivers off guard. Out of practice since last year, drivers slid off slick roads, got stuck in snow, and tied up roadways throughout Northwest Indiana. INDOT cautions all Hoosiers to use extra caution when driving this winter. INDOT says check forecasts before traveling and drive during the warmer hours of the day. Carefully monitor road conditions and watch how other vehicles are responding to the weather, and give yourself plenty of time to get to your destination. Indiana's 119th General Assembly convened this week in Indianapolis with promises from both Democrats and Republicans to see to it that Hoosier business gets done. That will be an uphill battle for state Democrats. Republicans hold a supermajority in both chambers of the General Assembly. One of the biggest issues facing legislators this year will be passage of a biennial budget. Speaker of the House Brian Bosma says that passing a balanced budget without raising taxes and increasing government transparency are priorities in 2015. An education plan put forward by Governor Mike Pence is also on the agenda. The plan proposes more flexibility for districts trying to overhaul chronically failing schools, ensures continued funding for pre-K programs, and expands school choice for all Hoosier families. Senator Karen Talion is taking the fight to legalize some marijuana sales to the Indiana Senate this session. Talion is introducing a bill to legalize medical marijuana in the state of Indiana. One Gary lawmaker is partnering with Indiana's Attorney General this legislative session to encourage the state's youngest Hoosiers to snuff out e-cigarette use. State Representative Charlie Brown of Gary and Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller are supporting proposed legislation that would limit youth access to new tobacco products that burn addictive liquid nicotine. A 2014 study by the National Institute of Drug Use found last year was the first that more teens smoked e-cigarettes than traditional ones. The new legislation cracks down on the largely unregulated market, requiring vape shops to be licensed, including e-cigs in Indiana's statewide smoking ban, and also taxing e-cigs like traditional tobacco products. Zeller says he hopes the higher price and child-resistant package regulations would deter young people from vaping. The Attorney General is also a board member of the National Public Health Foundation Legacy and calls e-cigs a major public health concern in Indiana. Another concern on the minds of many at the start of this new year, taxes. Tax experts say it is definitely not too early to get a jump on the tax season scramble. Luis Garcia, the Midwest spokesperson for the Internal Revenue Service, says this is the first tax season where Affordable Care Act considerations mean a little extra paperwork. People who purchased health insurance want to be on the lookout for Form 1095A in order to get full tax credit. Additionally, there's a form taxpayers need to fill out if they received an exemption for the health insurance mandate last year. Garcia says now is the time for taxpayers to locate all important tax documents. He says 1099 forms from banks and W-2s from employers should be gathered now and stored in one safe place. Indiana school children went back to school this week, and the state's pilot program to fund early childhood education got off to a strong start. On My Way Pre-K received more than 1,800 applications for enrollment from families in Allen, Lake, Marion, and Vanderburgh counties. The 4 counties were selected for the initial rollout of the governor's Early Childhood Education Initiative. Organizers were hoping to enroll a total of 350 children for the first phase of On My Way Pre-K. However, because of the high number of applicants, around 450 children were chosen by lottery to participate. The full rollout of the program, which will also include Jackson County in southern Indiana, will take place in time for the start of the 2015-2016 school year this fall, and is expected to include between 1,600 and 2,000 4-year-olds. Governor Mike Pence says the response to the pilot program confirms the need for high-quality early education for our most disadvantaged kids, and that his administration will continue to determine how best to serve more Indiana children in the years ahead. Providing Indiana infants and their mothers high-quality maternity care means providing Hoosier women with options. Hillary Powell talked to a group of healthcare providers reaching into the past to give modern-day moms and their families a healthy future.
It's a choice so rare, less than 7% of the population becomes Hoosiers this way in any given year. It may seem like a practice of a former time, but midwifery is a present-day preference for some Hoosier families, including moms seeking a home birth. If you're a mom-to-be seeking a bilingual birth experience, you're likely going to be facing only one face in Indiana. Marisol Holman thinks her job is more important than yours.
The realization of what it means to likely be the very first person to touch another human being coming into the planet. I mean, seriously, there is no other greater honor that I can come up with.
Her calling card is her name. But some become
just because of me, because of my name.
And she said, oh, she speaks Spanish. So that was like, I want her. I wanted something very intimate.
She is the only Spanish-speaking Latina home birth certified professional midwife regularly working out of homes. Colombian-born Holman is based in Anderson, Indiana, but travels hours around the state to catch babies, as she calls it.
Because she knew Spanish and because she was from a South American country, there was a special kind of bonding. I kind of trusted her automatically.
With a state as diverse as ever, it may be important to embrace cultural traits and traditions now more than ever. The latest U.S. Census estimates show that from 2010 to 2013, the Hispanic population grew more than any race or ethnic group in the state, with Lake County leading most others in growth. Holman says she wants women of all ethnicities, especially Latinas, to be empowered to know maternal care is not one size fits all.
My family is of color who come usually at the consultation when they come in and sit down. Then shortly, usually after, you have people that look like me birthing. You know, there's pictures, there's dolls, there's, whatever. And have said that's just so comforting. I need the affirmations that people like us do this.
Holman says her fellow midwives in hospitals have just as high a calling, but a 2013 change in Indiana law, House Bill 1135, only recently made the work she does now possible. Recognized midwife-assisted home births as legal.
Look, you should be able to have your baby wherever you want if you're making an informed decision.
Anna Vallow is a doula who provides non-medical care to pregnant women. As the legislation committee chair for the Indiana Midwives Association, she says culturally competent and thorough training is the loudest call from the midwife community.
So in those cultural type settings, having a care provider who can serve them and respect their needs as well as their wishes and their beliefs, that brings together some continuity for their care.
With a woman with brown hair who looked like me.
Holman says non-nurse midwives preserve cultural preferences of women they serve, but says not all voices in maternal health think home birth is a safe option. The Professional Society of Obstetricians has called home births riskier than hospital births. Holman says she's worried about backlash, but says her concern for diversity is greater. She says only 15% of her clients are Black and Latina.
In Mexico and in Central America and South America, who's using them now is the very poor because they're very much on the outskirts.
Although in her experience, Latina women aren't as open to the idea of home birth, she thinks even understanding those cultural differences is key to starting dialogue.
Daddy.
15-month-old Elizabeth Ray is special to her parents, but also statistically rare. Figures from the Indiana State Department of Health show only 27 Hispanic babies were born by home birth in 2012. Elizabeth's mother, 35-year-old Joanna Perez Ray, says when she moved to Carmel, Indiana a few years ago from Chile, she wanted to embrace a form of birth culturally frowned upon.
I don't know if there are many Hispanic women that want to have the children at home. It's seen as something you just want to avoid. You just don't do that. It's not safe. It's not anything that you would expect in a birth. So when I told my friends and my family, they were all shocked and like, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, my mom said, I don't understand you. You have all these ideas of how a birth should go, and a hospital is that.
Elizabeth's mom says having a home birth expert with whom she shared a cultural connection was so invaluable, she's doing it again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm doing it again.
With Marisol.
With Marisol having the mix. It was a little bit of a mix in English and Spanish, actually. I don't know. It was so amazing. And I'm so grateful I was home.
Holman says she is currently training an apprentice set to be the first African-American home birth midwife in the state. Next week, we visit midwives who serve Northwest Indiana families outside the home in hospitals. A leader also in a rare position in the region is only the fourth man to have this new title. The Most Reverend Donald J. Hine is now Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Gary. More than 24 bishops and several local clergy members, including Cardinal Francis George of the Archdiocese of Chicago, attended the installation ceremony earlier this week at Holy Angels Cathedral in Gary. Here are some highlights from the Mass.
Thank you for opening the door when I knocked on it. It was really cold out there. To all of you, I pledge my heart and my prayers. How I wish I could sit down in the kitchen of every home, get to know all of you, and have a good chat. That will happen, I hope, one person, one kitchen, one cup of coffee at a time. Please do not ever be afraid to approach me, challenge me, tell me hard truths, or ask me to do things for you. I am here to serve with all of you. So today is not just about your new bishop, as it is about the entire Church of Gary. Diocese is 60 years old, and I'm only the fourth bishop. So it means I have to stay here at least 25 years, right, to continue the succession. I sincerely hope so. Thank you.
This is an odd year numerically, and 2015 will see state legislators doing some arithmetic of their own. The Indiana General Assembly revisits the school distribution formula on odd-numbered years. Steve Walsh sat down with local superintendents to discuss the school funding formula.
Lawmakers in Indianapolis returned to work this week. They are looking at making drastic changes to the school funding formula. This comes as schools around the state have shown deficits, especially after the state expanded charter schools and vouchers for private schools. To talk about it, we have interim Maryville Superintendent Tony Lux and East Chicago School Board President Jesse Gomez. I also want to make a quick note that later in the session, we're going to also talk to some folks from charter schools and voucher schools. But in the meantime, the school funding formula seems to have so many people upset at this point. Why are so many people unhappy? Let's start with Tony.
Well, the reason is because there's such a spread in terms of dollars per student in the general fund. The general fund was taken over by the state, funded by the state. And right now, there's a very broad range in dollars per student for a number of reasons, but that is the major concern.
All right. And I was in Indianapolis this week. I was able to talk to the governor and some of the legislative leaders. And it seems like the good news is that everyone wants to provide a certain amount more money for public schools. Are you concerned what's going to happen, though, to this school funding formula, that this could take away from an urban school district like East Chicago?
Well, that would certainly impact us negatively, in East Chicago, but I'm all for more money for public schools, however, not at the expense of the urban school districts, where we really need it for services that perhaps aren't as in demand as there are in other school districts.
So what happened? We used to be that some of the best well-heeled school districts were places like Munster and Valparaiso, some of these big suburban districts. But now these are the districts that are really showing some pretty sizable deficits. What happened?
Well, it goes back to when the state went from property taxes funding public schools to the state income tax and general tax funding public schools. So that changeover resulted in the state taking it over, but that was immediately followed by the economic recession. So the funding from income tax and sales tax dried up, which meant that the state then withheld something like $360 million from the budget for schools.
And so what's the solution here? Was that a kind of a failed experiment? Now the state, half of the state budget is now paying for schools. In the end, was that a good idea?
Well, not if there's no contingency to make to have an insurance policy, so to speak, to level off changes in state revenue. Nobody foresaw the huge drop, and there was no contingency plan to ease the burden on everybody.
Are you concerned that that the state is considering? I mean, you hear a lot of talk of like there are a lot of suburban districts out there that are really lobbying to change this formula to provide a little more revenue. Are you concerned this is going to come from urban school districts? And is there a concern that the state has kind of given up on some of these school districts?
I hate to think that they've given up. We've made so much progress in East Chicago, for example, with the funds that we do have. Of course, we could always use more money, but I don't think that this should not be an either-or situation. We're all in this together, and so I would hope that any funding changes that are made with consideration that the additional duties that are required in school districts like East Chicago and to some degree even Maryville.
And that's what we're going to have to watch as this process continues here. The General Assembly just started up this week, and they're going to have to make a decision by the end of April. In the meantime, this has been interim Maryville Superintendent Tony Lux and East Chicago School Board President Jesse Gomez. Thanks to both of you for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first sign of heart disease for many people is when they experience a heart attack. Patients with diabetes are at higher risk for developing heart disease, but may not show any outward signs or symptoms. A new study examined whether undergoing a screening CT to look for heart disease or just standard medical management is better for long-term outcomes. Catherine Dolph explains in this week's JAMA Report.
Michael McPhee has type 2 diabetes. Having heart disease never really entered his mind until he received a phone call from his doctor.
Dr. Muhlstein called me and said, "You've had a silent heart attack," and it came as quite a shock and quite a surprise because I had absolutely no symptoms.
That brings up the question is, should we start screening patients who don't have heart disease or evidence of heart disease but are at risk for it?
Dr. J. Brent Muhlstein from the Intermountain Medical Center Heart Institute in Salt Lake City and co-authors randomly assigned 900 older patients with diabetes who showed no signs or symptoms of heart disease to either screening CT coronary angiogram or standard medical care for diabetes. Patients were followed for an average of 4 years to see which group experienced more deaths, heart attacks, or hospitalizations for unstable angina.
We expected 8% per year to have one of those major primary events. Whether they were in the control arm or in the randomized scanning arm, only less than 2% had an adverse event each year.
The study appears in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association.
In these patients, 70% of them had at least some evidence of coronary artery disease by the screening study. That was more than we expected. All of those who were found to have significant coronary disease were recommended to go on more aggressive medical management.
Dr. Muhlstein says patients found to have severe heart disease did undergo bypass surgery or stenting when indicated.
This study just emphasizes that it's not necessary to screen these asymptomatic patients with expensive screening tests like CT coronary angiography. It is, however, extremely imperative that these patients receive aggressive, guideline-based optimal medical therapy.
Michael is receiving that medical care and is monitoring every aspect of his health.
I've obviously tried to improve my diet, mostly for the diabetes aspect, but knowing that it'll help with the heart problem as well.
Catherine Dolph, the JAMA Report.
It's a new year, but one local theater group is happy to be doing what they've done for the past 7. John Kane talked to the leader of a group of thespians in this week's Eye on the Arts.
Eye on the Arts is Rip Johnson, and Rip is the owner of Beatniks on Conkey, not Cockney.
We thought it was we'd make a tongue twister for you.
Yeah, you know,
John, thanks for having me.
Beatniks on Conkey. Conkey is a street in Hammond.
It is.
And you have beatniks there, apparently.
We do.
Have they been there long?
We've been there 7 years.
7 years. So you have and you're a theater.
We are.
You're kind of a different theater, though.
A storefront theater. We try to have various theater groups there. It's very intimate, just like this. 3 rows. Everybody needs plastic sheeting for every performance.
Oh, no. Do you provide that?
Well, you bring your own. It's better.
I see. So you're going to have an anniversary show.
We are. January 17th, 8 p.m. We're going to lay out our season. 6 plays. Hammond Community Theater is a big part of our theater. Beatniks Entertainment does 2 plays. We have 6 scripted plays and 2 Beatnik Babes performances, which is a variety show that a friend of ours, Kim Bernstein, writes and directs.
And you do that, you say, twice a year?
Yes.
The Beatniks Babes, that's cute.
Yes.
So all in all, your season is comprised of all these shows?
Yes.
This is like a vast variety of shows.
Yes, and we throw in the occasional musical variety. Someone presents an idea to us for dance or music, whatever. We're open to almost anything.
And how did you come about creating Beatniks on Conkey?
Well, Hammond Community Theater was looking for a place to play, so to speak, and we had a storefront, Bonnie and I, my lovely wife, and we decided to go ahead and open up. It used to be the Southtown Tap.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
We remodeled it.
Oh, they had lingerie parties there at lunchtime.
I believe so.
I've heard of them.
No more lingerie
Seriously.
parties.
We used to use a mailing service on Conkey Street. The Art Center in Munster used this older lady who...
Right across the street from us.
I loved her. She was so nice.
Her building is now gone.
Aw.
Yeah.
It's my historic mailing service.
Absolutely, yes. She was there even when we first acquired the building. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck with everything you do this year. I promise I'm coming.
Well, we hope to see you, John.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Eye on the Arts.
Eye on the Arts is made possible in part by South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
Over the holidays, Kristen Estes dropped in on a local theater show that's more horror than happy. The Hobart Art Theater's version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show is an interactive performance, but is not for children.
Describing Rocky to non-Rocky people is so absolutely difficult. You have to bring an open mind. If you don't bring an open mind, it's just...
It's Rocky Horror. It's this movie that was so outside the norm at the time it was done.
The movie is a 1975 parody of old B-film, sci-fi, 50s and 60s stuff like that. It centers around Brad and Janet, the main characters, who are your typical 50s American kids who get caught in the rainstorm and have to go to the castle, the foreboding castle, for help, where they meet the inhabitants who are from the planet of Transsexual in the galaxy of Transylvania.
And from there, all kinds of
wacky sexual hijinks, I guess.
But the audience participation wasn't something that came when the movie was first released. That didn't happen.
No, actually, the film bombed when it came out. Even though it was a huge hit stage show, the film bombed, and they put it on the midnight circuit to see if they could try to squeeze some money out of it. And from there, this all happened in New York at the Waverly Theater. And from there, one night, some guy just yelled a line at the screen, and it started from there. People started, trying to top each other. Then they started bringing props, throwing rice during the wedding scene, using squirt guns during the rain scene, and they would just keep trying to top each other until it evolved to the point where they were all costuming themselves quite screen accurately and performing the movie actually in front of the movie while it was going on.
I saw the movie and I fell in love with, the soundtrack and just what it was. This glam rock, rock and roll, weird B-horror film sort of parody film. I loved it. And then when I discovered what shadow casting was...
Explain, if you haven't heard of it, what's a Rocky Horror shadow cast?
Oh, the Rocky Horror shadow cast, it's a cast of people who do their best to costume themselves as screen accurately as possible as the characters on the screen, and then they act the movie out while it's on the screen in front of it. So we build props, they, put together costumes, we study costumes to get down little stupid details that no one else but us really cares about.
You can find more Jump in the Lake and other stories on www.lakeshorepublicmedia.org. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, and since it's a new year, we're trying something new here at Lakeshore Report. It's called NWI Pride, and it's a moment to take a beat to feature what you consider the best of Northwest Indiana. Tweet us at Lakeshore Report with the hashtag NWI Pride, and I'll definitely be looking out for your shout-outs. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Lakeshore Report.